helping people cope with and overcome life's challenges. This is Life Transformation with Michael Hart, award-winning psychotherapist, author, and Canadian certified counselor.
Thank you again for joining us on this episode of the Life Transformation Show. Today we begin a powerful new series, Great Women of the Bible. And we will be exploring stories of courage, faith, and transformation and how they apply to our lives today. So, as usual, we have in studio with me psychotherapist and author Michael Hart of Elim Counseling Services. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Denise. It is so good to be back in studio, and I can't wait to get into this series because many people are of the misperception that the Bible degrades women, but this series will show you the important role that women plays throughout the Bible and how they speak to our lives today.
Well, before we start, if you're new to our show or need counseling support, you can find us at elimcounselingministry.com or by calling 613-699-1677 or 1-877-204-2914. And listeners, again, I want to invite you all to our upcoming healing retreat entitled Restored and Transformed. And this will be a powerful weekend devoted to emotional healing and lasting freedom. So join us on Friday, June 12th through Sunday, June 14, 2026 at the beautiful Spruce Home Inn, just 1 hour and 30 minutes from downtown Ottawa. And this intimate Bible-based retreat experience is designed to help you find freedom from emotional pain, break negative generational patterns, and heal deep emotional wounds. You still have time to get the early bird rate. So please get your name on the list today by going to elimcounselingministry.com. We would truly love to see you there. This episode will begin with Deborah in Judges chapter 4 and 5. I really love this woman. She was a woman of courage, leadership, and unwavering faith. And Deborah rises in a time not very peaceful, but in a time where there were conflict and fear. So many people today are living under pressure, uncertainty, and emotional strain. But Deborah's story will remind us that even in those environments, God is still at work and He is still raising up leaders. So, Michael, can you help us understand what was happening in Israel at this time?
Let us start there because I think it's very important for us to set this stage. But before we get into that, let me just say that Deborah was a prophetess. She was married to a man by the name of Lapidoth. And she had this role of prophetess where she would hear from God. But she was also a judge in that she would be the one that people would come to settle disputes. But on top of that, she was also a leader that would give military directions to the army. So in Judges 4:1-3, it shows that Israel is under oppression for 20 years. And this prolonged stress reshapes how people think and respond. So psychologically, this is known as learned helplessness. The people stop expecting change. They're in this place of fear where they are prisoners to their fear and they can't see any other outcome. But onto that scene comes Deborah, and she's a mighty woman of God, a fearless woman, and she's leading her people towards freedom, towards change. So Judges 5-6 paints the picture of the severe situation that they were under. It tells us that the people avoided normal roads due to fear, and fear became the atmosphere in the environment. And so in this atmosphere emerges Deborah, a prophetess, a judge, a military leader. And while others lived in fear, she lived in faith, believing that change is possible with God. She heard from God and led others with wisdom. So this is a powerful reminder to us that you can be surrounded by fear and still be led by faith. You do not have to absorb the fear of the people around you.
That's right, Michael. You said it perfectly. So Deborah's actions fit beautifully with Psalms 46, 1-2. Because in that psalm, God reminds us that He is our refuge and our strength. So, Michael, what really strikes me, though, about Deborah is that she is living in the same environment as everyone else. So she's aware of the fear, the oppression, and the uncertainty. Yet she is not overwhelmed by it. And this just reminds me also of Isaiah 26, verse 3. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. So, what do you see in Deborah that allowed her to remain steady, grounded, and clear minded when everything around her was so unstable?
That's a good question. And someone out there might be wondering what makes someone in that situation take a different stance than the other people around. So Deborah demonstrates what we could call emotional regulation, rooted in secure identity in her relationship with God, who she was in God. Her identity was not rooted in her circumstance. Her identity was rooted in God. She is fully aware of the fear, the oppression, and the instability around her, but she doesn't allow herself to be governed by it, to be controlled by it, or to be influenced negatively by it. And that distinction, I think, is critical because many people today are not just living in difficult environments, they are being shaped by those environments. The anxiety around them becomes anxiety within them. The instability around them takes over their lives and shapes how they react to life. But Deborah shows us a different pattern. She is not taking her cues from her circumstances. She's taking her cues from God's voice. Where are you taking your cues from? Are you taking your cues according to the climate, the atmosphere that you're living in? Or are you taking your cues from what God says in His Word? And Deborah, in taking her cues from God, that is what gives her stability in the midst of those uncertainty. Romans 12:2 tells us, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So Deborah is living that out in real time. While others are being conformed to fear, she is being transformed by truth. Psychologically, this is what we would call cognitive anchoring, where your thinking is not dictated by external pressure, but deeply held truth, but by deeply held truth and conviction. And spiritually, it is even deeper than that. It is identity formation. So Deborah knows who she is in relation to God. She is not taking her cues from others. So if things are unstable, they may feel unstable. If people are anxious, some people become anxious as well. And if situations are certain, people begin to lose their clarity. But we see that Deborah didn't become unstable. She didn't become anxious. She didn't lose her certainty. She was anchored in God. And to someone listening to this show today, you may be surrounded by uncertainty, but you can be anchored in God. You don't have to be led by your fear. Fear may be present, but it does not have to lead your life.
That's right, Michael. And another thing that, I see in this story is that Deborah is actively leading in the middle of a fearful and unstable environment. She's not waiting for things to settle before stepping forward. And as I think about that, it reminds me of Joshua 1:9. That's a very popular scripture. Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So, Michael, what does Deborah's example teach us about how God raises leaders? And so, Michael, what does Deborah's example teach us about how God raises leaders in the middle of pressure, uncertainty, and fear?
Well, I think that's a perfect example that when God called leaders, he called people who are in the midst of crisis situation. He calls people who will need courage to step forward and to take on that role. So a lot of us want to be leaders, but we want to be leaders in comfortable situations, when there is no pressure, when everything is going well, when the blessings of God is flowing around on everyone. But God sometimes calls us to take up the mantle of leadership when things are difficult, when we may even be afraid and we need courage to step forward. That was the situation with Moses. When God called Moses, it was in the middle of slavery, where his people were slaves in Egypt. When God called Gideon, the people, the Israelites, were under oppression from their enemies. And it's the same. God called Jesus into humanity at a time when there were war and chaos, and the Roman Empire were at its height in terms of the evil that it was doing. So if you want to be a leader, it's important to realize that it's going to take a lot of courage. So you may feel like stepping back. God is calling you to something, but you feel like stepping back. But what if God has placed you there, not just to survive in that situation, not just to survive, but to lead? Not necessarily in position, but in influence, instability, and wisdom. That was the situation with Deborah. She stepped in the position of leadership when the people around her were turning to idolatry and turning away from God and were being punished by God. So God is calling someone today to take up the mantle of leadership. We are in a day and age when evil is plentiful around us. People are turning away. Sin is becoming the norm. Good is seen as evil and evil is seen as good. And in this kind of situation, it will take courage to step forward and say, I will lead.
We will be right back. You have been listening to the Live Transformation Show, where award-winning psychotherapist and author Michael Hart of Healing Counseling Services has been speaking about great woman of the Bible, Deborah, courage in the midst of fear. You can find out more about us at elimcounselingministry.com or by calling 613-699-1677 or 1-877-204-2914. Please consider making a donation to this Christ-centered ministry through Elim Mental Health Foundation. Your donations will help us to stay on the air and to provide subsidized counseling to those who can't afford it. Well, Michael, before the break, we see that Deborah delivers a clear word from God to Barak. And this is found in Judges 4:6-7. And she said, I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands. But Barak, he was still afraid, and he said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go. So, Michael, what does this moment reveal about fear in leadership?
Well, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. First of all, to say that, this to me is evidence how the Bible was ahead of its time in painting women in a positive light. Because here we have the Bible telling us that Barak, the military leader, the man who is trained in battle, is afraid and saying to a woman, if you don't go with me into battle, I am not going. I need you to go with me. So I think that shows the power and how people, even the military leaders in those days, looked up to Deborah. And sometimes in this day and age, because of how people may look down on women, you may be listening to them, you can see yourself in certain leadership position because you feel the old boys club will not give you a chance, or that people will not respect you because you're a woman. Let me say to you that with God, all things are possible. In a day and age when the cultures around would look down on women, Deborah became such a powerful leader that Barak, the leader of the army, is saying, if you don't go with me into battle, I will not go. From a psychological standpoint, we can see that Barak is not resisting God. He is struggling with fear. He knows that this woman, Deborah, hears from God. She's a prophetess. But he's saying, nevertheless, I need you to go with me in battle. So this reflects his anxiety. He's leading. He has this responsibility as a military leader, but he is giving into the fear and the power of the enemy. And so he is living out his anxiety and he's speaking out his anxiety. So when people are called to step into something significant, fear often surfaces. So Barak has been called to step into victory, and he's saying, I'm not going, because he's fearful. He's saying, Deborah, you go with me because I am not going. Whereas he should be saying, if God is with me and God is saying that I already have the battle, I am going whether or not Deborah is going. So many people today live in this same space. They feel that they have to be accompanied by others and they have to go by the dictate of others to move into God's will. Don't be a Barak, be a Deborah. Deborah said, I heard from God and this matter is already accomplished. Barak said, I know you heard from God, but I am still afraid and I am not stepping forward unless you go with me. So many people today live in that same space. They know what they should do. They sense God's leading, but they hesitate because of fear. And fear can be paralyzing and keep you away from the will of God.
Yeah, that is so true, Michael. And I just love this powerful leader, Deborah, and know that God is still raising up lots of powerful women in leadership today. And we see that Deborah, she doesn't rebuke Barak harshly, but she responds with clarity.
Exactly. Judges 4:9 shows Deborah saying to Barak, she said, I will go with you, but the honor will not go to you, Barak. The honor will be given to a woman. So notice the balance in her response. It's incredibly intentional and emotionally mature. She remains supportive. She's saying, I will go with you. She tells the truth, but she also does not absorb Barak's fear. Many of us in that position would be saying, if Barak is the military leader and he's afraid to go forward, I am not going. Maybe he knows something that I don't know. But what Deborah said instead is, I know that I heard this voice from God. And even if Barak, the military commander, is afraid, I am going to step forward into my destiny because I know God is calling me. And that sometimes it's not easy because in moments like this, people tend to move to one of two extremes. They either overcompensate where they soften the truth and they keep the peace. They don't want to hurt Barak's feeling. And so they compromise the truth instead of speaking what God has laid on their heart. Or they go the other extreme. They become overly forceful when they push truth without sensitivity. So we see that she didn't push the truth without sensitivity. She was aware of Barak's fear. She will support Barak, but she's also telling him that he's going to miss out on his destiny of winning a great battle because of his fear. So it's important when you're in those situations to make sure that you do not absorb the fear of others, but that you walk in truth and you walk in the calling that God has given you in your life. And so I want to say to someone listening today, but that you may be waiting to feel confident before you move. But remember that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving despite fear. Barak could have been afraid and still go forward, leaning on the voice of God, but he let his fear get the better of him.
Yes. Well, Michael, let's move on to the next thing we see in this story. This story is really a classic when it comes to a twist in the plot, because Deborah had prophesied victory would come from a woman, but there was an unexpected ending to this battle. So, what does this teach us about how God works?
I think this is a powerful reminder that when God gives us a word, we tend to fill in the blanks the way we expect that word to be interpreted. So I'm sure many of us, when we read this story for the first time and Deborah told Barak, yes, I will go to battle with you, but the victory is going to, the glory for this victory is going to go to a woman. Many of us assume that this woman was Deborah. But as the story unfolds, it was actually Jael, a Canaanite, who actually killed Sisera, the leader of the army, and brought victory to Israel. So this teaches us at least a couple of things. Number one is that it teaches us that even though God may give us a word, the way that he fulfills that word may not be in the way that we think it's going to happen. And secondly, that God uses unexpected people. Sometimes the people you think it's going to be there to fulfill God's call on your life, it's not the one who God is going to use to bring about his purposes. God used Jael, the Canaanite, to bring about the victory over Sisera and his army.
Definitely, Michael. Our God is a God of mystery. I love it. So, in Judges 5, we see Deborah, this great woman of God. She sings a song of praise to God for the victory over the Canaanites. So, how does Deborah's song of praise speak to us today?
Well, I think it's important that when we have the victory from God, that we take time to pause and to praise, because many of us go from crisis to crisis. God brings us through one crisis and we're already thinking about how is he going to take us through the next crisis. The song of praise in this book of Judges by Deborah is 31 verses long. Compare that to Moses' song of praise in the book of Exodus, which Exodus 15, which is only 15 verses. So we should take time to praise. Also, in the song of praise, Deborah thanked people for the victory. She did not claim victory all by herself. She praised Jael. She praised Barak. And she thanked people who played a role in the battle. Many of us as leaders, we want to take the glory for ourselves. But she is a reminder to us, Deborah is a reminder to us that we need to give praises to God and we need to give praises to others who are helpful to us in bringing us the victory.
Exactly, Michael. Well, we have come to the end of our show. So thank you for this insightful discussion, and thank you, listeners, for listening. And if today's message spoke to you, please consider sharing it with someone who may be encouraged by it. And you can replay this episode on Elim Counseling YouTube channel. Also, remember, join us on June 12th to 14th at Spruce Inn Home for our upcoming Elim retreat. The early bird rate is still available to you, so please register today at elimcounselingministry.com. Join us next week as we continue our series, Great Women of the Bible, Esther, the Power of Timing and Discernment. If you have been blessed by this ministry, please consider making a donation through elimmentalhealthfoundation.com. Until next time, this is your co-host, Denise Hart.
And Michael Hart, praying together that God would bless you in all your relationships and keep you sound in mind and pure in heart.